The deserts of Egypt are famous of springs. The water of these springs are either hot or cold. People enjoy swimming in it daytime or nighttime, wintertime or summertime. The water itself of the springs have got minerals in it, so they are very good heal for the body. Some people come to enjoy their time, and some other people come to heal. Water springs spread all over Siwa Oasis, and they form a great attraction to both tourists and Egyptians who come from all over to enjoy a dip in those warm springs that are famous of their healing water that contains minerals. One of these springs is B1, or the well number 1. To reach its location, you can enjoy a safari desert trip with a 4x4 wheel drive to its magnificent location. Siwa Oasis is considered one of the major depressions in the western desert of Egypt. These depressions are Siwa Depression, Qattara, El Bahariya, El Farafra, and the depression of the two oases of El Dakhla and El Kharga. The depression of Qattara and Siwa and Gharbub Oasis lie on one line from east to west. The total area of Siwa Depression is 1,088 square kilometers. In its middle exist 4 salty lakes. They are El Maasir in the northeast of the oasis, El Zaytun Lake in the east, Siwa Lake west of Shali city, and El Maraki Lake in the west. The biggest of them all is El Zaytun Lake, which length reaches 30 square kilometers, and its width is 4 to 5 kilometers. One of the most important funerary rituals that were performed on the statues of the deities and the kings and the individuals, or on the mummies and animal corpses, like the Apis bull, is the ritual of opening the mouth. This ritual aims at reviving the vital force existing within the divine entity, or the human or the animal ones, and embodied within the statue. This ritual helps in alerting the senses of the deceased, like the eyes and the nose and the ears, so that the deceased can use these senses. It's a magical ritual in its essence, and is usually performed on the statue or the body of the deceased himself. The term Webet Er means opening the mouth, and is related to the ritual of opening the mouth. The ritual of opening the eyes of the statue or the mummy of the deceased is called Web Erti. In spite of the knowledge of this ritual as the name of opening the mouth, yet it was not concerned just with the mouth or operated on the mouth only, but it was mainly connected with all the senses of the dead person. As usual, this ritual was performed on the statue of the deceased. Thence in the 18th dynasty, these rituals became performed on the deceased himself. The one who performed the ritual of opening the mouth of the deceased in front of the tomb was a priest in the form of Anubis, and the priest called Sem, and the older son of the deceased. That's by using different tools. The ritual of opening the mouth includes a group of rituals taken from separate rituals that reaches 6 in number. Ross mentioned that the ritual of opening the mouth is a funerary ritual that reincarnates the transitions and transformations of birth and childhood. The ritual of opening the mouth of the deceased, which was operated on the statue of the deceased or on his body, resembles the same rituals that were done to the newborn child, for it equates the operation of cleaning the mouth of the newborn baby with the smallest finger of the hand. Thus, tools that resemble that smallest finger were used in that ritual. Accordingly, whatever is applied and goes for the newborn would be applied on the deceased, like eating and drinking and using his senses. It's believed that the ritual was performed in the beginning on god Osiris, like the mummification operation, and that it was Horus who performed this ritual on his father Osiris. Karnak Temple is the biggest religious building in the whole world, not just in Egypt. It's built over almost 200 acres of land, over 2,000 years of time. The pharaohs of Egypt came here one after another to build us great constructions there, ending up by the first pylon built by King Nectanebo. So, when you come to visit Egypt and when you enter Luxor Temple and Karnak temples, you're going to compare between all the monuments of the world and the monuments especially here in Luxor, because it's a very specific city, it's a very nice city to be visited. Karnak Temple is considered the biggest and greatest historical record in the world. For its buildings, which were constructed in 2,000 years, over 60 acres of land, comprises written records of the history of Egypt and its civilization. The sacred land of Karnak included the big temple of god Amun-Ra, in addition to other temples dedicated to different gods, like god Khonsu Temple and goddess Ibit Temple in the south, and god Betah Temple in the north, and the destroyed temple of god Aton in the east. All these temples and chapels were surrounded by a great mud brick wall that reached 12 meters in thickness and 550 meters tall and 480 meters wide and 20 meters high. The wall has 8 entrances, 2 in the north joining Amun-Ra Temple with Monto Temple, and it's barren from reliefs, 2 entrances in the south leading to goddess Mut and god Khonsu, and the gate of Ptolemy III that lead to Luxor Temple. There are 2 entrances in the east and 3 in the west, the middle of which is where the first pylon is situated, and it's the main entrance of Karnak. The wall was built by King Nectanebo from the 30th dynasty, which is the last ruling family in the pharaonic history. Barget thinks that the mud brick wall is not horizontal, but bent in a wavy shape for 2 reasons. The first one is that this geometrical method prevents its destruction. The second reason is religious. The wavy wall resembles the eternal water which surrounds the sacred hill which rose out of the eternal ocean called Nun. So the constructions within it represent the sacred hill itself, and thus they are sacred. Siwa is a unique oasis in Egypt that has got its own culture and heritage. It's distinguished from the rest of the oases in Egypt because of its inhabitants. The Siwians came originally from the branch of one of the tribes of Zanata, who mixed with some of the Arabian tribes that came from Libya and north of Africa. They have their own dialect of Amazighian language and their own customs and traditions and ways of life. All this had to be recorded and kept somewhere, and here comes the role of a museum. The Museum of Siwa is so close in its contents to the heart that it's like a Siwian house. It's very intimate and wonderful. It shows you the dresses of the Siwian women, which are complicated and deserve viewing and even studying. The jewelry section is magnificent with its silver exhibits and traditional accessories. Even the eating habits and furniture are there too. When you visit Siwa Oasis, it's nice to go around the monumental places, but it's nicer to get to know the life of the people and how they lived not long time ago in their preservative nature and away from the rest of Egypt. The museum is located in the heart of the city and deserves a quality visiting time to complete the visitor's grasp of life in Siwa. Luxor Temple is that grand temple situated by the Corniche Street by the Nile in Luxor City. It's one of two major temples that are visited by tourists throughout the whole year in Egypt. This temple was built by King Ramesses II and King Amun-Hotep III. So there used to be 4 statues standing in front of the temple representing the king. But after restoration, now all the 6 statues are standing. It is remarked by the obelisk in front of it. There used to be 2 obelisks. One of them is here in front of the temple in its original place, and the other one is in the Concorde Square in Paris. So when you come to visit Luxor, you need to pass by Luxor Temple and learn a lot about the Egyptian pharaohs. The credit of building Luxor Temple in its present form, on one axis from north to south, on the east bank of the Nile, goes to King Amun-Hotep III, one of the 18th dynasty's kings. Later in the 19th dynasty, King Ramesses II added a great pylon to the front and a wide open court behind it with papyrus columns. It's possible that the first kernel of this temple was placed in the Middle Kingdom era, but we're not sure where it was, for it was completely destroyed. Beyond doubt, Amun-Hotep III preferred to build his temple on the ruins of that ancient sacred chapel which existed in the Middle Kingdom, most probably in the 12th dynasty. Besides, Queen Hatshepsut and King Thutmose III had constructed a small building composed of 3 chapels dedicated to the triad of Thebes. It still exists today, right behind Ramesses II pylon to the right of the entrance. It's also possible that King Ramses had reconstructed these chapels in their exact location and recorded his name on them. The front pylon of the temple was built by King Ramses II. It's intersected by the main entrance and headed by 6 giant statues representing himself. 2 on both sides of the entrance represent him sitting, and 2 standing statues used to be beside each of the seated 2.
King Ramses III owns a complete temple inside the constructions of Karnak temples. This temple was used during the daily life of the king, unlike the other temples in the West Bank, which were called memorial temples. Here the king owns 3 sanctuaries inside. The one in the middle belonged to god Ammon, the one on the right side belonged to his wife goddess Mut, and the one on the left side belongs to his son god Khonsu, the god of the moon.
The temple of King Ramses III was constructed in Karnak temple in front of the final gate of the temple at its time. It proves that Ramses III considered the temple was finished by the building of Ramses I Pylon and Ramses II Avenue of Rams leading to the port of the Nile. He didn't know that his small temple was meant to be included within many constructions added later in the 10 dynasties which followed, ending by the Greek invasion. Preceding the temple are 2 statues of sandstone representing the king wearing the double crown of Egypt above the nemes, or the traditional hair cover. Once upon a time they were colored, just like the temple behind them. Ramses III is represented on the walls of the pylons, grabbing the hair of his enemies, who belong to 3 captured cities, and presents them to god Ammon. In the open court, 8 statues are carved with their pillars on each side of the court. The king is represented in his Osiris shape. The walls on the back side of the pylon have King Ramses III receiving the Jubilee symbol from Ammon, who promised him a long time of ruling. On the other walls he proceeds the procession of the bark of Ammon-Min. An ascending aisle leads to a vestibule, which lies ahead of the colonnade with 8 papyrus columns. This hall was once inlaid with bronze or gold. Through the hall, we reach the most important part of the temple, which is the sanctuary. Here, there are 3 chapels for the triad gods of Thebes: Ammon in the middle, Khonsu on the right, and Mut on the left. They are decorated with scenes of the king performing religious rituals on the sacred barks that used to be placed within the sanctuaries on altars. It's one small temple within the precinct of Karnak, but it includes all the factors that are to be found in any ancient Egyptian temple of the New Kingdom, and forms with the rest of the constructions of Karnak temple the splendid eternal constructions of the mighty Egyptians.